Of the Franklin Board of Education. The meeting has been properly posted. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Yank,
Here.
Mrs. Sapersky,
Here.
Dr. Khan,
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski,
Here.
Dr. Beer,
Here.
and Mr. Sprague.
Here.
We are all present.
Great, and I'd ask we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to go get community calendar.
I got it. Yep, I grabbed it. Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Witkowski, seconded by Dr. Khan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Community comment. We have one person signed up for community comment. Joey Merchan, please.
Hi, I'm Joey Merchan. This is my daughter Lily. And just going to start at the beginning. For the past 15 years, Lily has been riding the bus to and from school. We have always followed the same procedures as indicated in her IEP, where an adult is present to put her on the bus in the morning and take her off the bus at her house in the afternoon. On her first day of school this year, she went to the school bus and got on it as usual, but unfortunately, she was not returned home to me safely. The bus driver that day, who worked for Go Right Way, dropped Lily off at the opposite end of our circle with no adult present and left her there. Thankfully, Lily managed to make it home most of the way, despite all of the construction going on along our road, and ended up walking into a complete stranger's house nearby. Anyone who knows Lily understands that she cannot communicate to you her address, her phone number, or provide her full name. We were very lucky that that neighbor had a vague idea of where she lived and came to our house, knocked on the door, and asked my older daughter if we were missing a little girl. Lily was safely returned home, and when she came home, she was in hysterics, very upset. And as I was at work at the time, my daughter notified me by phone of what had happened. I attempted to call the high school. I had called Heidi Engel. I emailed Evan Walton, her case manager, Mike Volo, Heidi Engel, and Joe Jonas, whoever I could get to get some answers. I even contacted Ann Sapersky to try and get a contact number so I could just talk to someone. In response to the calls and emails I made that afternoon, I did receive a call back from Mike Volo, Ann Sapersky, and Heidi Engel, all expressing their apologies for what had happened, and I am truly grateful that they reached out regarding this incident. I also received a call from a representative for Go Right Way apologizing for the incident. But since then, I have had no further communication from anyone in the district regarding this issue. No one has called me with concerns on how Lily or her family were doing in the aftermath of that situation, or to update us on any safeguards that have been implemented to prevent this from happening again to Lily or any other special needs student in the district. 100 different scenarios have gone through my mind of how this incident could have gone horribly wrong for my daughter. To say that I am upset is an understatement, and I hope that I never have to experience anything like this again. I think it's important moving forward that the Franklin School District makes sure that safety precautions are put in place so that whatever bus company we go with in the future understands and follows the correct protocol regarding special needs students. Parents of special needs students fear for our children's safety nonstop. I placed my trust in the Franklin School District that my daughter would arrive home safely from school, and I don't know if I have that trust anymore. Lily, how did you feel when you were left at the bus stop on the first day of school?
Sad.
Did you know where you were going? It's frustrating for me to have experienced this. We've had 15 great years, and then this happened. And I just want to make sure that this never happens again, because like I said, this may not have ended happily for anyone. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the district, I do want to respond to that because I feel terrible that that took place, and I'm glad that you had immediate follow-up, but I'll make sure that you have follow-up tomorrow because I know actions were taking place before then. I didn't ask if they followed up with you. I assumed, and I shouldn't have done that, so we'll make sure somebody follows up with you tomorrow. And I'm sorry that happened to you and Lily, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did, but that didn't sit well with any of us here either, so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Annalee. All right, does anybody else care to comment? All right, thank you. We'll move on to the Gesundheit. Move on to the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Sapersky, seconded by Mrs. Yank. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. School board calendar. There is a regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, September 27th at the ECC at 6:30. It is, note the time change, it's changed because of homecoming parade, and the regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, October 11th, 2023 at the ECC at 6 o'clock. District Administrator update. Mrs. Bennon, please.
All right, last time we were together, we were celebrating being in the middle of our welcome back for new educators, so we had 2 more days after that board meeting that we enjoyed together, and then we welcomed all staff back. So we're happy to say at the first day back with students that we were fully staffed. Definitely some interesting hiring season in there as always, but we'll have more with that on our staffing report in October. But exciting things that happened with welcoming our staff back. We had a fun time, or team building, I should call it, in every school, welcoming back all of our staff, and that was really well received. Like, we get at the hard work, we look at our coherence plan and our goals in our buildings, but we first made sure we were connecting, checking on each other, seeing where everybody's been, making sure that that belonging feeling was there and sincere. And it was nice to be able to pop through different schools and see some of the activities going on and a lot of smiles and joy. Afternoon led into some time in their classrooms, everybody getting ready for all of the open houses that took place. Day 2, we welcomed everybody back at the Saber Center with breakfast and came together in the Saber Center, talked about our coherence plan, our tactics. Dr. Moe presented in that area. I did a welcoming back message. The Education Foundation presented on what they're about and their purpose and how they support learning in the classrooms. We did a fun activity that morning. We tried to think of a different way than just standing up and talking about our core values or just telling you what our tactics are. And instead, we had our staff go out and challenge them to create fun pictures to depict these things in action and to get out in the community. It was pretty amazing, some of the pictures that we had. And have been kind of every day sending an email to recognize each of those different categories to all of our staff. And it's fun pictures just to have to use throughout the year. Positive feedback on just the ability to connect with different groups. The principals put together mixed groups. We had all of our staff back, and it was just a nice way to kind of get to know new people. So you'll see some of those photos coming out through the Franklin Find tomorrow, and probably include some in the district newsletter next week. That led into then our our third day back in the buildings. The principals went through with their SIT teams the school improvement plans and those goals that we had set during that retreat in early August. So it was a really nice kind of culmination of bringing it around to what's going on in the schools and then also in the classroom as educators started working on their goals and their PPGs or their personal growth goals for the school year through educator effectiveness. So great welcome back, and then the really exciting part of having students back, and all of us have been present in buildings and able to recognize and welcome, been able to figure out new traffic patterns at buildings, and just had a really nice start overall to the school year. Always a few hitches that we've had to work out, but some positive moments in there too. Monday, we as a board did school tours of all of our schools to kind of get that three-dimensional look of what we heard about in our master facility study last meeting. I think that was a nice opportunity to walk through the buildings when students were in, interact with staff a little bit, and just see, what all of our buildings look like and where the money goes to when we're looking at our CIP projects and we're talking about our bigger expenses. As a superintendent, I have attended the Professional Advisory Council, so it's called PAC, it's through CISA 1. I don't often talk about it, but I think what's interesting is this year I've moved into a position on the advisory committee, which I find it advantageous for us as a district, as we can start to pick some of the content areas that are really of interest and pertinent, and start to gather groups of superintendents in the greater Milwaukee area to work through some of that. So what that looked like last Friday was very literacy focused and a lot of sharing of different strategies being used as we're looking at Act 20. Bob's shaking his head because this is the world he's living in, right? We were talking about Lexia, about Haggerty, about units of study, about just a variety of different literacy resources that are used. But really nice to also be grounded in, like, it's about the relationship with the student and understanding who they are and where they are at in their learning journey and getting the right resources in their hand to address their needs, but mostly that art of teaching doesn't get lost. It's the quality of the educator in front of them. So it was a positive discussion on work that we can continue to do, not only in our district, but how other districts are approaching it in the state. We also had a SWSA meeting this week. Ms. Wachowski was a part of that. Mr. Cromie's not with us early this week, so he's not with us tonight. He's excused, but also excused from that meeting. I think the most interesting part about that is the policy forum presented data on teacher moves and leaves. So what does retention look like? And when educators are moving being to another district versus leaving, meaning maybe leaving the state for education or leaving just education in general. So Laura and I are working together to partner some of that in her staffing report in October. But it's pretty interesting to see that every school's faced at least 10% turnover. And that was a piece I think that popped out when we were listening. But they had a lot of tools in there, and I could share that out in Friday updates with the board too, that you can go in and manipulate and look at what those moves look like. People leaving cities to go more to suburbs. What does that look like for rural districts? While we've had turnover, I feel like it also helped me put a spotlight on things that are going well for us that other districts are struggling with. And then a lot of the same things that we're all struggling with. And so conversation there also went into how do we strengthen the pipeline into education, and we could sit all day and talk about that. But there's some good work going on to try to work with legislators to make some of the licensing a little more accessible. So Superintendent Brown Deere is leading some of that work that a lot of us are standing behind. In more fun news, we have a busy week ahead. So the Sabre Marching Band has their invite this weekend, hosted at the high school. The Ed Foundation has their consignment sale, which raised an absorbent amount of money last year. Angie could probably tell you off the top of her head. So excited for that. A lot of that money comes right back to our classrooms and to students. So that's exciting for us. And gearing up, because it's a community event, to kind of have homecoming that's only a week and a half away. So among all the other sporting and athletic and other activities going on, those are a few that stand out ahead of us. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. All right, reports, presentations, and other board business. Summer school report. Mr. Blessington, please.
Yeah, I have, you, in the board packet, you had the 2023 summer school report. Before I open it up to any questions, just a couple highlights. One of the big shifts we made a little bit later in the game was moving a bulk of our programming to Forest Park Middle School. So that in itself was a logistical challenge. We have a very flexible buildings and grounds crew and local staff to make that happen pretty quickly. So aside for some traffic flow challenges, we had the first couple days of summer school having our entire bulk of our program there. Things went very, very smoothly over there. So really pleased about that. You see like all the different offerings we've had at the elementary, middle, and high school. One of my favorites, just because it hits home, is Lego-mania. Just because my third grader is very much into Lego, so it's interesting to see how that data trend a little bit. And then, I'd open up for any additional questions you may have.
Bob, do you have an idea? It's not in here in like hard numbers, but in your high school enrichment classes, like how that enrollment has changed? I know some of them have only been offered like 1 or 2 years, but do we see high schoolers looking for enrichment kind of classes like that, or is that not so popular?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think if you looked at our numbers from last year, for example, they would be similar. Obviously, the performance training class is very popular, as is the transition to high school, which is an offset of summer school. I could certainly get those numbers, but really these have been fairly consistent. I think like these courses look very similar to our numbers what we had last year.
I just didn't know if they were
Speak to it.
growing at all. I know.
Yeah. That's something I can, like, from first glance, without having the numbers in front of me, I think they've been pretty consistent, but that's something that I can like pull up from like last year if you want, if I can get that information for you.
Thanks.
And what is performance training session?
Yeah, it's like strength and fitness and strength and agility, you know, use it as a way to get ready for the season. So we're able to run that through summer school.
Oh, would never have guessed that.
But they get FIAD credit for that. Is that correct?
They do not get FIAD credit
Okay.
for that. No.
Not for the enrichment.
Why did you move to the middle school, and do you plan to keep it there going forward?
Good question. First of all, I would say that our enrollment, as we looked later into spring, we saw that it was itching up there, and our numbers, you know, our summer school program is super popular, and we are at like really a kind of a point where we needed to make a decision on that. You know, and I would say, you know, in terms of next year, that determination hasn't been made quite yet. I will say anecdotally that we were pleased. There was a lot of, like, if you look at plus delta from having it in one campus, there was a lot of positives that came out of that. I think some of the things that we need to look at is like capital improvement projects. I know that you got an overview of that and how that, you know, will impact our decision making. And obviously the middle school is a little bit different situation than the rest of our schools, but we'll have a better idea when I come back in February on like the course approvals.
So prior years, it was at one elementary school, or?
Correct.
Oh,
Yep.
just you picked one?
From what from my history here, it was at Pleasant View. I think we've tried to rotate around, and then we had some different projects. It always, you know, how popular our summer school program is. We really have maxed out. So, like I said, our buildings and grounds crew did an excellent job of getting age-appropriate furniture over, getting the spaces ready. That was some of our concerns by our administrators involved, that myself included, to make sure that that was really smooth and really went above and beyond. Andy Daniels and others went above and beyond just to make that really smooth. Our summer school principals did just a spectacular job with like managing all that and kind of reassuring parents. And, you know, by day 3 in there, we had, you know, the traffic flow was worked out and things were really smooth. So we were pleased, at least what we saw. I think we need to do a little bit deeper dive to see, you know, for next year, if that'll be a permanent location or not. That's something that we'll have internal conversations about what's going to be and make the most sense considering everything.
Any staffing issues? Did you were able to hire?
Staffing is always a challenge. It's always right up to the moment where we're getting ready. Are we going to be able to run this class? That's always like the unknown, and we always, you know, we'll make it a point to, you know, the best case scenario is if we can get teachers that are Franklin teachers to do that. It helps with just logistical pieces and getting them onboarded. But staffing is always a challenge. Our educational assistants, getting those. A huge benefit of having middle and elementary together is the fact that we're able to like think really purposefully about our educational assistants being in one space. So that was like, you know, a really nice consequence that happened of being on one campus. We had to think creatively, and we were able to do that. It also allowed our summer school principals to collaborate on some pieces and think differently about staffing. So those things will all kind of weigh into like moving forward and how we plan for like future summer schools.
Does summer school help us in any way either retain or get new staff?
I think I mean I can just speak of, you know, what I've observed. I think it's a way to like maybe some people that aren't familiar with the district, get them in our system and find out, and, you know, maybe plan to see if they're in a neighboring district. I can't speak to you know, if we've hired like how many people we've hired directly out of summer school that weren't former or, you know, that became Franklin teachers later.
It's also a really nice opportunity if we're hiring new teachers into the districts for the fall. If they, we always advertise to them like, hey, if you're interested, we do offer a summer program. So if you want to become more familiar with Franklin, we definitely welcome you to teach a summer school course. And they like that because they get their laptop right away. They get all their paperwork taken care of. So the fall is not as overwhelming in that transition. So we do have quite a few people that come to us in that way.
So there is a history of us hiring from that summer.
Not necessarily from summer program, but it's more that spring hiring season that we're doing, and they're coming to Franklin in the fall, but they want to make it a little bit more of a longer transition versus like I come back on the first day of new teacher week. Like now I know the building, I know some of the students, it's just a different type of transition.
Is transportation a lot easier because it's in one building? And Andy's not here, so maybe that's gonna be a tough question
I
to
think
answer.
I would jump in on the transportation one. I think because like Bob said, the shift happened later because the numbers, I mean, when you look at the report, we were at 399 in 2022 and we were at 520. So we don't have an elementary school we're gonna push 520 students into. So the answer is kind of given to you, like, we're gonna be
Got
at
it.
the middle school next year. However, what we can look at, and we talked about right away, because that shift became late, we already had the 2 start times communicated for elementary and middle. Like, is there a need for that? It was too late then to shift it and cause confusion for families. But we've talked about, like, we could probably consolidate some bus routes and change those times to be the same. But we have to, like, look at that a little bit closer before we finalize that decision. But I think that's a big learning we've taken away. And a worry of moving in the school is that it's so big, but Bob also articulated that the signage and the commons and things really, like, the wayfinding became easy, and the educators did a great job of being there with their signs. And once, my own son went, and once he knew where to go in a day, he was set and they were off, and they could meet in the commons if they're unsure of where to go, but some would walk right to the classroom, and it was kind of neat to see that independence. But yeah, I would say busing we could probably work on to reduce expense if we can get those start and stop times down to the same, and that's just one thing we have to look at yet. It also allows a bigger drop-off zone, which I know it can still back up on Forest Hill, but it does help with that, as opposed to PV would have been, even if the numbers would have allowed, it would have been a struggle to try to do pick up and drop off there. You do get a lot of parents that choose that, even though we do have busing.
Mr. President, the ACT prep online, is the school paying for that, or is it kind of, the students still have to pay for that for the summer?
That's a really good question. I have to double check on if there was a course fee for that. I don't know that information. Like if that was a cost to that, I'd have to look at our fee structure. If we had a cost to that, I can get back to you on that.
And the AP Summer Academy, what did we offer in AP Summer? Was it specific like AP Lang? Or it was
Yeah,
just
it was a chance to explore, from my understanding, they explore like some AP things if there's some summer work that they wanted to do in order to get ready for their AP classes, that would happen during that time.
Ready for AP.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions?
This just says, which is good, no financial or other resource implications, none at this time. So there's no financial concerns, or resources are all available as needed?
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I think that's just standard from like the action report. I think it's on there, so there wasn't any, just being an information item.
Summer school is interesting with cost, because if you charge for a class, then that money goes directly back to the students through the class, something that you're doing. And then the calculating of enrollment, it's about a 3-to-1 for reimbursement from the state as an FTE. So there's money that comes in with summer school, some of it's offset by what you're paying staff and things. So I guess if we were gonna look at the financials, those would be things that are the costs that come with summer school and the money flow.
And we're not statutorily required to provide transportation for summer school, correct?
Correct.
Just a little bonus we do.
It is a very nice bonus that Franklin does.
It saves parents a lot of money and time.
Absolutely. Just
That's a
bringing it
good-
out.
Good perked out, because especially in summer when you are
It's hard.
still working and all the time, most of the
Yep.
parents are still working, and the kids can just go in, hop on the bus, and come back easily. So
It's probably offset by the amount that we get for enrollment. but
Right,
maybe
there's a fair balance there, right?
Do parents use bus? I mean, I see more parents dropping their kids off.
I use the bus.
There's a large amount of students on the bus.
Oh, there's so
Mhm. It's a mix. There's parents that drop off too,
Yeah.
depending on schedules, really.
I would say more parent drop-offs in the morning than pickups. We have more kids that take the bus home in the middle of the day than drop off in the morning. So there's a discrepancy. I think, I'm guessing because of work schedules, I'm just saying more can drop off
On their
before
way,
work but
yeah.
can't pick up in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate when you're running routes. You know, because you have to, but that's kind of a known entity.
I just think the variety for the elementary is just incredible. All of these options are just, there's something for everybody, looks like.
I think the demand will, is a nice problem to have. I think us being able to staff it properly is something that we'll continue to have to like think creatively and strategically about. So I'm glad that you noticed all the great offerings.
And the curriculum is, I mean, the teachers aren't just having to come up with this on their own, like C is for camping. There's an actual.
There's curriculum that goes with it and, you know, support to get them up and running and some prep time at the start of summer school to get them going. So it's a really quality experience just from working in a different district, like what Franklin's able to offer in terms of summer school program is something that the board should be really proud of.
Absolutely.
All right, anybody else have further question or comment? All right, thank you very much. 23-24 employee handbook updates. Ms. Lancour, please.
Yeah, so this evening we have the updates for the 23-24. I gotta make sure I stay on the right here. Employee handbook updates, so this comes to the board on an annual basis. There is a summary that has kind of the overall changes, whether it was a clarification or if something was just rewritten to be a little bit easier for employees to walk or read through, and then any additions were made. The memo kind of pointed out the big additions that were added, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
I just had a quick question
Yeah.
about the tutoring services. There was a state or a little paragraph that said that I guess the educators or teachers aren't able to give any information.
So that is only specifically like we wouldn't have them, like our principals wouldn't necessarily send out in their building newsletters advertising private tutoring services is what that meant. It doesn't mean by any means if a parent approaches an educator that they can't have that
Okay,
conversation.
like Mathnasium is, you know, out there. I
Correct.
can't imagine they wouldn't be able to say, hey, here's Mathnasium.
Yeah, it's just that we won't necessarily advertise specific educators or things like that in any sort of Franklin
Okay,
communications.
but they would be directed on where to find that
Yes.
information.
Mhm.
Okay.
What do you-
Just quick, so the
Please, Linda.
tardiness one kind of surprised me. We don't have, nobody's punching a clock, are they?
Well, we do have hourly employees in the district, so obviously with any position, you do have on occasion where you have to address that people are showing up for late for work or leaving early. So that was really added into our overall attendance policy to help our supervisors have something that's documented to kind of have to fall back on to say, well, it is in our handbook that like if you are tardy, like this is something that we need to address. So yeah, we absolutely have hourly employees that might on occasion, you know, come to work late and it's something that we have to address. So it's really a support for the supervisors in that sense and to be clear and transparent with our employees.
Well, and even beyond hourly employees, everyone has a time that they're
Absolutely.
supposed to be at school, you know, before students arrive or, you know, whatever that is. Even if you're not necessarily punching a clock, there should be an
Yeah.
expectation of when you're there.
So they don't literally punch a clock. I mean, is there an app that they use for their hours or how?
Yeah,
do-
so our hourly employees use, we actually have one in the room in the back corner you can look at. It's a little reader, it uses their fingerprint.
Okay, so it's not something like with my work, I could kind of fudge it and say, oh, I'm here because I have an app. But they literally have to literally be in the room to do that.
Yep, they have a reader at all of the different
Okay.
schools that they can utilize.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve the 23-24 employee handbook updates as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Dr. Beer, seconded by Dr. Khan. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. School Board Liaison Reports. Linda, please.
Well, I did attend the SIBSA, and I think Annalee covered the the better part of the meeting, although there was a legislative review, and it was made known that we are now in the silly session period of legislators' lives.
What does that mean?
That means that they're kind of prepping for their reelections and just throwing everything
Oh,
and
gosh.
everything
Like messaging bills,
out there,
basically?
out
Yeah.
there. So I never heard that term before. I thought, oh, okay, explains the process. And I think the tool that's available, the public forum puts out there is pretty easy to use and pretty cool, and I think Annalee will probably share that with you.
Yeah.
If, typically I would have get the slide deck. Usually the prior director would turn that slide deck around pretty quick and could give it out to people, but this one seems to take her time and, but for whatever reason, otherwise you would have that. Because it's good to flip through it and just
Yeah,
kind of stay,
I
easy
agree.
to do that.
I appreciate getting that.
Yeah.
So if I get it, I'll pass it along.
Anybody else?
I had a meeting with Andy Daniels as the liaison to Buildings and Grounds a couple weeks ago. And that was just, I mean, first meeting for the year, just kind of getting set up, but it's interesting to see how he has kind of planned out when he'll be able to report out on some of the things. And we talked a little bit on Monday about like our savings from changing to LED lights and things. He'll be at about a year of data for that after the first of the year. So he would be able to give us more information about that and just some of the different, just general upkeep and projects and, buildings and grounds things. So we kind of have a little schedule of getting together and hearing more about that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to reach out for you if you want. But, and then just for the liaison to the Education Foundation, we had the great fun run on Saturday, and now this Saturday we have consignment sales. So come get all your great deals on children's clothes and toys and whatever else. It's a huge event and very, like Annalee said, beneficial to the district, but then also to the community as well.
What time does it start
8:30.
officially, or is everybody there at 7?
The volunteers,
Line
they'll be
engine
around
sales.
8. They'll be there around 7.
Volunteers will be there early, but
You could bring coffee at 7.
Um,
Everybody.
good answer.
I think another nice thing is as the sales continue to go on, anybody who doesn't care to pick up their unsold items, we have a growing number of charitable organizations that come and shop the sale to fill their closets for their various kids that go through their programs, and it's really awesome.
Linda, please.
I also did meet with Leo, our new special needs or.
Student services.
Student services, yes. Day 2, I think it was. I hope I didn't scare you away or anything.
He's here.
There he is.
So I shared a couple items with you that were kind of came up prior year, but other than that, it's going to be a good year.
I've met with Jess twice, and we're just figuring out what we're going to talk about. It's all good.
All right, school and community engagement reports. There's a lot going on.
Go to all the things.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people going to a lot of things. The band,
Yeah, good luck
The
finding
band
parking
is-
at the high school these days. That's what I'll say. If you go over there, there's volleyball and swimming and soccer and whatever else. There's no parking. It's a great problem to have. But you should all come to the band thing on Sunday, or Saturday.
I'll be there.
Saturday.
I'm in charge of the weather. It's going to be good weather.
oh, good.
I'm counting on you, Mary.
Friday night also?
Friday night football game. And Friday night football is junior football and Palms or cheer or something. So it'll be a busy night at the football field.
Okay.
Do
All right.
you have to buy your tickets in advance?
Not here.
Not here? Okay, I was wondering about that, because
Linda, you have a pass.
Oh, I have a
Yeah.
pass.
Got your pass.
I'm equipped, thank you.
And those should be for away games in our
Correct.
conference as well.
Any regular season
Conference, yeah.
Yeah,
conference.
conference.
Yeah, not
games, sorry.
playoffs.
Yeah. All right, anybody else? All right, future agenda items, seclusion and restraint report. Mr. Ekman, that'll be your first opportunity, although you're welcome to say something if you like. Master facilities study, community and recreation department report, at-risk report, annual curriculum review, and new courses. Oh, sorry, boy. Policy, a lot of policies coming up. 4130, 4241, 4242, 6122, 6310, 6451. threat of violence drill review. And so there can be a closed session for, and administrator goal setting coming up.
How many meetings are these topics spread over?
It's always projects out 2 meetings.
We should have put a couple in this meeting.
I was,
We've looked at that, like this is balanced. There was things like we weren't gonna ask Leo to come in tonight. and
Fair.
Do his
Fair.
first thing, otherwise we maybe would have moved that up, but some of it's just the timing in the year, like new courses have to be a certain time to get in the course catalog, and
Okay.
so we have, as a cabinet, we've looked at it and moved some things around, so it does look exhausting. However, I think a lot of those things will move pretty fast.
Okay.
And a lot of the policy stuff is the first read, so
Correct.
please.
For the Community and Recreation Department report, can we get an update on our relationship with the city in that report? I know there was something in the Friday update, but, what topics are you discussing? And I know you mentioned, Annalee, that we have a voting position on one of the boards or commissions.
That's all the updates.
The Parks
we can-
What does that mean, and what does that mean for the district in terms of our
Sure. Means we have a, right, yep, we can. vote
Yes.
To add, we can discuss if that's a different item you want added to an agenda. It wouldn't really make sense to add the city piece into the rec department. That's Brad Anderson's report. So he could do with the planning piece with that board seat, but if you're talking about other city meetings, we would want to look at a different, it wouldn't be the proper time to talk about it under that title, so we'd have to add something, an agenda item, which we can do if that's what the board wants, absolutely.
Well, would like to know what's going on, so.
All right, thank you.
One other thing?
Yes, please.
Also, at the June meeting, I had made the motion on a budget amendment, and I thought there was going to be bringing that back to discuss again at the board level. Can we add that as an agenda item? People wanted more time, they wanted more information and and maybe we bring that back?
I mean, yes, there certainly will be, I assumed that we would, I assumed, and maybe the board feels differently, I assumed we'd talk about it when the budget is brought forth.
People seem to be not comfortable with hearing the information and then voting. They wanted some time, just like we have the 2 readings on some of these policy issues.
The information on your suggested amendment, you mean?
Correct. There was a lot of, I'm not sure about this information, and what does this mean? And I don't know where you people are at as far as that. I would like to know where you're at.
So to give some context, not to answer that, it's a board discussion, but to give some context on first and second read, that is what we've been doing, and we've talked about that. The business pieces when it's budget, because Andy brings updates throughout the year and more often than prior administration, we haven't always done a first and second read on it because it's a continuation of a conversation with budget. Unlike courses, you're not continuing to talk about a course through the year. So if that's something that the board wants changed, then we would add on this list for future agenda items, you would see the first read to the budget. And then that's coming up because that will be the second meeting in October. So it doesn't hit this list because it's 3 meetings out. But if you wanted a first read on it, another look at it, it would come on this list for the first meeting in October. But that's what we've talked about as cabinet, is that it's not, it's the budget. It continues to come. Andy brings it forth more than you were familiar with Mr. Milsner, and just so you understand that background. And we can change however the board wants it to look.
It might make sense to have a first read on the budget prior to the meeting where we officially approve the budget. That's the October meeting, I believe, correct?
Second October meeting, correct?
So that might make sense to have a first read of the budget, and then perhaps your item can be introduced at that meeting, and then if there's any questions in the interim, we can address them. Would that
That makes
satisfy?
perfect sense. Thank
So
you.
some of the numbers won't be crunched perfectly yet because we won't get those from the state till I believe it's the 15th, and our meeting in October is on the 11th. So just knowing that, that's part of the reason that it's not on the 11th either. So if we add it, Andy will have it most certainly, but he won't have those finalized numbers from the state till I think it's the 15th. I know it's after the 11th, which is our October first October meeting.
Does that seem
So
reasonable
we would talk about, we would have a first reading of the budget on the 11th.
That's not fully as set as it will be on the 25th, where you have that
And then we
official finalized.
have the official final list So we'll know on the 11th that it's not the final budget, but it's very close. And perhaps at that time, you'll have more information so that we can, I'm assuming that you're going to look at it and want to make some sort of amendment. And that can be presented, we can talk about it on the 11th. The amendment could be presented on the 25th when we make the, when we
Right, that makes sense.
move to pass the budget.
Just some time to.
So we would not get information and literally have to make a decision on the same day? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
I guess-
Please.
Yes. The master's facility study, when that comes back to us, what is, you know, is it an action item, or what is that going to be about?
I think we,
Informational again, or?
so I think we laid that out in the last meeting. We were very clear about what the direction is, what the next steps were. We talked about that. We did the tours Monday, submit questions. We're gonna bring the presentation around that, the guiding principles. That was all in that slide deck. The slide deck was shared in the Friday updates, and we've brought it through in conversations. So if there's clarity needed or a question, I would say email myself or one of the Andy Daniels or Andy Cromie. But we did lay that out right at the end of that slide deck, and you do have that in Friday updates to review also.
Is it an action item or not?
I'm not
The
sure
master
what action
facility
we
study is
take.
not an action item.
I'm not sure what action, I think we're looking to continue to give administration clarity on how we want to move forward with our facilities. And there's certainly going to be a lot of that this year, as we talked about when we toured the facilities and in the debrief on Monday. And so I think we can look forward to a lot of healthy discussion this year on facilities and moving Franklin forward.
And what does at-risk report mean?
So it's an annual report that we update the board on our students at risk. So it could be at risk of graduation and looking at their performance. You'll get the full report, and I mean, that's pretty much it, yeah.
Oh, that's you,
It's
okay.
Yep. If you want to see old ones, they're in the board docs. If you want to look at last year's meeting, they'd always fall in that October
Okay.
timeframe,
Oh, thank
September,
you.
October.
All right, anything further? Otherwise, Linda, no?
I don't know about these. Well, it would just be after the meeting as far as what we're doing with this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, availability. All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Sapersky, seconded by Dr. Khan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:43. Thank you.